Hi everybody, Adam Guthrie here, the founder of I Feel Good magazine, and I'm really fortunate today to have a very special person with us who is a medical doctor and teaches and lives a whole food plant-based diet, which is quite rare to see a doctor actually doing that. Her name is Heleen Roex. Heleen, welcome. How are you?
Thank you, Adam. Thank you for having me. And I'm great. Thank you so much. Thank you for the invitation.
No, I'm so pleased that you're here with us because, you know, you have something very exciting things coming up, planned, like the Doctors for Nutrition conference coming up early next year in 2019. Yep. So I'd like to know a bit about that. But before we go into that, I'd really like to get to know why you as a doctor decided to go plant-based and to help people heal disease with a whole food plant-based diet. Can you tell us a bit about that?
Okay, sure. It's, Adam, it's about 8 years ago, actually, that I just by accident, surfing the internet, what you sometimes do, came across the CNN website, and just in that sidebar, I saw something about Bill Clinton going on a diet. And I thought, why is Bill Clinton on a diet? And why is that news? But that helps because I clicked on it, and that changed everything, because then I saw the interview by CNN anchor Wolf Blitzer. And he did that simultaneously with Dean Ornish, Dr. Dean Ornish, and Dr. Caldwell Esselstyn. And they talked about the fact that they are helping patients with heart disease, and Bill Clinton was a patient with heart disease, stop and reverse heart disease. And I thought, that's not possible. You know, as in, it's a chronic disease. And what we know about chronic diseases, they gradually get worse over time. So you don't actually heal from them. So what I then learned in that little snippet, that video interview, that blew me away. So I started researching these doctors. And actually, Dean Ornish had done a randomized controlled trial, which is the pinnacle of research. And he showed so clearly that these patients on a lifestyle change, including a whole food plant-based diet, could just stop and reverse their heart disease. And Dr. Esselstyn did that as well. And he had more like a case series of patients. And he did diet only. And that were very sick people. They were, you know, as in the cardiologists said, you know, we can't do any more. They have had stents, bypasses, medication. No more extra treatment was offered. And so then he took these patients and he could stop and reverse their disease. And patients became healthy again and lived for many, many more years. So yeah, through these two doctors, I started researching other doctors in this field. And as they say, the rest is history.
Wow, it's amazing, isn't it, that you came across that? You as a doctor, being able to get information that you can heal patients like Esselstyn did in regards to heart disease, where there was no more hope, and do it with food and then reverse that. How does that make you feel as a medical doctor to be able to do that?
Yes, I think this is basically the dream. It should be the dream of every doctor, that you actually can help patients, as in stopping their disease and even treating it. And then so simple, with very healthy nutrition. I mean, no side effects, negative side effects, only benefits, because we now also know that it's very beneficial for so many other chronic diseases. You know, heart disease then, but also diabetes type 2 and certain cancers, autoimmune diseases. So it's so beneficial.
It really is beneficial because I'm actually, I'm one of those living proof case study examples of someone that had a heart attack when I was 39 and 110 kilos. I was really overweight. And then I switched after the heart attack to a whole food, plant-based diet. And within 6 months, I was off all medications. It's been 9 years now, and I still don't have to take medications. I feel the best I've ever felt in my entire life, healthier than I've ever been. And, a few years ago, I took on a physical challenge and went and did an Ironman triathlon. So I went from heart attack to Ironman. So this really does work, and it excites me to see more and more doctors understanding this and becoming interested in this, which is what, you're starting to do in the Doctors for Nutrition organisation. And before we go into the Doctors for Nutrition, I'd like to know, what is a whole food plant-based diet?
That's a good question, because a lot of people would say it's a vegan diet, which it is. The diet is vegan, but vegan is about lifestyle, also, clothing and everything in life you do, avoiding the use of animal products. And a whole food plant-based diet is focused on food only. That doesn't mean, I think that most of the whole food plant-based people are vegan as well. But if you are vegan, you are not necessarily whole food plant-based. In a short way, I would say it's healthy vegan eating, So let's go more in detail. Whole means you eat plant-based food, so plants. So no animal products. So that's no meats and no dairy, no eggs, no fish. And you try to eat the plants as whole as possible, as close as nature gives to us. So you don't want to process it too much. I always say you still want to recognize the food as it is, when you are eating it. And so it's from the plant kingdom. And there is a nice way of putting it. It's done by PCRM, the Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine, Dr. Neal Barnard. They have the power plate. And it's not a pyramid, it's just the plate where you eat from. It's divided in 4 sections, and it tells you vegetables, fruits, whole grains. So here the whole comes back, not refined grains, but whole grains, and legumes. So that's all your beans and the lentils and the peas. It's all included in legumes. And that's basically it.
Yeah, you mentioned something interesting there, like whole grains. So can you tell us the difference between a refined grain and a whole grain?
Yeah, so a refined grain, if you look, for instance, at how a grain is being, what it all, the components it has, all the components, then if you leave on most of the components and you ground that up, then you have all the fiber and all other healthy components of a grain still in there, nutrition-wise. But for instance, with brown rice, which is a whole grain, versus white rice, which is a refined grain, a lot of these outer layers of the grain have been taken off with all the good nutrition, and you are just left more with a simple grain. And that grain is being metabolized so much more faster that, for instance, because it's a carbohydrate, we are now left with a more simple carbohydrate. So it gives you glucose spikes in the blood. That's what you don't want. Compared to a whole grain, takes a long time for the body to digest, and that's what you want, because your blood glucose will go up a little bit, and then it will taper off and will stay level for a long time, that means you are satiated for a longer period of time instead of going up and then comes down again because of your insulin kicking in very rapidly as well. So yeah, flours are more refined. Of course, then you've got a wholemeal flour or whole spelt grain flour. That's a little bit better. But as soon as you start grinding it up and making it really, really fine, we're already processing.
Yeah. Yeah, so we want to avoid the process. We want to buy the brown pasta or the brown rice or the brown bread or the brown flours, not the white one. So what you're saying is a whole food plant-based diet then is no animal products and fresh fruits and vegetables the way nature hands it to us, and and also grains and legumes in their whole form, and legumes and beans like chickpeas and kidney beans and those sort of things.
Absolutely. And then what people need to realize, Adam, and that is sometimes the tricky thing, they think, oh, now I'm eating carrots and celery and salads, and that will not fill me up. You know, I will be hungry the whole day. And indeed, if you eat just carrots and celery and salads, that will happen. So on that plate, if you visualize that power plate, you have that's all quarters. So by volume on your plate, you should have a quarter of whole grains and a quarter of legumes. And that means here we've got a lot of also starch-containing foods, starchy foods. These are very satiating. And nowadays, you hardly are able to say the word starch, because if you look at popular media, then that's all banned, you know, like also the potato and the sweet potato, which is so sad because these are from so many centuries back healthy foods and foods that sustain us. And so if you have about 50% by volume on your plate starch-based foods, that will give you the satiation and a lot of nutrients, don't get me wrong. And then the other half will be, you know, also the different colors of food. So, and all these different colors means different phytonutrients. Phyto means plant, and so specific plant nutrients. And these are so important for us. These have antioxidant properties, immune stimulating properties, antioxidants. And all these different colors do a little bit of different work. That's why we always say try to incorporate a rainbow of colors in what you eat. So the orange ones, the yellow ones, the red ones, purple, etc.
That's a nice way to eat, isn't it? And it's interesting. A lot of people do think, oh, I'm just eating, you know, these plants. I'm not going to feel full and it's going to be boring. But in actual fact, you can make incredible food out of plants with herbs and spices. And, you know, every country in the world, like Mexican or Asian or Indonesian or every country in the world has got their own traditional dishes, and they've got some incredible plants. Moroccan, Italian, Japanese. You can make some really good whole food tasty meals, can't you?
Oh, it's basically a new world opens. I am eating a lot more of a variety now of foods than I did before, because before you were more centered around that, okay, what meat do I eat? And then you had some veggies and something to go with it. But now you are looking at, you know, you've got beautiful legumes and you've got beautiful different grains to choose from. And then all the different vegetables. So, yeah, I find it a lot more tasteful, but also a greater variety.
Yeah, wonderful. So why do you think that more doctors aren't interested in nutrition?
Yeah, that's a difficult one. I always start by saying I'm not blaming doctors because 8 years ago, I didn't know. Mm-hmm. So, that would be very hypocritical to say, oh, these doctors, they don't know. I didn't know. By accident, I learned about this. Mm-hmm. And there you get it. By accident, I learned. Mm-hmm. So it's not in the doctor's curriculum.
Okay.
Most universities, there might be a few exceptions, most universities don't have a lot of nutrition education. So it will be, a certain, a few hours maybe. And then they probably talk more about like the macronutrients, as in, you've got carbohydrates and proteins and fats and what's important about them and that kind of thing. And a few of the vitamins and that kind of thing will be addressed. But they don't have in the curriculum the power of plant-based nutrition because it's not really yet, that knowledge has not really yet reached the medical world. And that's sad because there is really good science out there. But we always draw that parallel a little bit with smoking. Before doctors started recognizing that smoking and a lot of illnesses, including lung cancers, are related to smoking, that took so many research papers that already, hinted in that direction. Before actually the medical world started to act on it. And I think that's what we see a little bit here as well. So it's not in their toolkit. So they don't actually know what to tell the patients because they don't know themselves. Mm-hmm. And so they go by the media. That is what I usually say. That's where I got my information from. You read things or there isn't like an expert telling you something but that's not enough, and that's not always accurate either.
Right. So is it your desire out of seeing this information, learning about this information, applying it to yourself and applying it to patients, is that what inspired you to start the Doctors for Nutrition organisation? How did that come about?
Yeah. Thank you for asking that. We just registered like a few months ago that new charity. It's a charity, Doctors for Nutrition, and it's on the website doctorsfornutrition.org. And it's also tax deductible, so we are very that we have that status. And it came about, Adam, that I soon after I learned about nutrition, the role of nutrition in healthcare, I went overseas to the United States. They are a little bit ahead of us in this area. They started, I think it was in 2013 or so, they started a conference, the Plant-Based Nutrition in Healthcare Conference. And that is supported by a charity called the Plantrition Project. So that's a charity, and they are hosting that conference. And I went to that conference, and that was phenomenal. And since then, I went every year. So that's now 6 years in a row. And after a year or 3, I thought, we need this in Australia as well. So that's how it came about, that I thought we need this in Australia. And around that time, I also, by coincidence, happened to link up with Raw Events Australia. And that is founded and run by Lucy Stegley. And so we started talking. I said, I need someone who can help me set up a conference. And she was very interested in the nutrition side of, and the health side of nutrition, about healthy nutrition. So that's how we started. And it took us a while because then we realized that it would be better to have an organization as a charity supporting this. So setting that up, getting that all organized, took us a little bit more time, but we are there and we are so happy. And the conference is called Nutrition in Healthcare. So the Australasian Nutrition in Healthcare Conference, and that will be in the weekend 15 to 19 February next year in Melbourne.
How exciting. Like the first one. It's been years in the planning. And congratulations.
That's unbelievable.
So,
yeah, we are so happy.
With the conference, what is the conference about? Who's it for and what will be shared there?
Yes. So although we have chosen the name Doctors for Nutrition and the conference is Nutrition in Healthcare, a lot of people might think this is really only for doctors. And that is not the case. So yes, we have chosen this name because we see that there is this need for doctors to be educated. And that's why we are focusing on doctors. But in the end, we want to reach the public. We are doing it for the people. But nowadays, it's still that we help people as individuals. We help people, and you through your organization, and we help people. And then they might go to the doctor, and they say to the doctor, I'm on this new, diet or lifestyle, which involves, just eating plants and plant-based nutrition. And many doctors might be scared and say, I don't think that's healthy. You need some meat and you need some dairy in your diet. And that's because they don't know. And that's probably what I would have said so many years ago, because I didn't know. And that's why we need that education to doctors. And we are firstly also aiming at, with our organization, to start educating GPs, because that's the first port of call for patients. And so, yes, we want medical practitioners. They are not only doctors, of course, also dietitians, physios, all the allied health as well. But it's very well, the organization is also very well approachable, and people, it's not too difficult or whatever for the general public. So everyone is welcome.
Wonderful. Yeah, it's a nice. So anybody listening to this, I highly recommend getting to it, because there was a conference you held a couple of years ago that you invited me to speak at, and it was Dr. Kim Williams was speaking there, and I came as a case study, and the information we learnt from the speakers, the doctors at that conference, was incredible and really beneficial, and reinforced to me that what I'm doing is right. So thank you for that. So who's speaking at this conference?
So we are very excited that we have some great international speakers as well as local Australian speakers. And one of our keynote speakers is Dr. Neal Barnard from the Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine. And that's fantastic, of course. He will be part of this conference, and on the Friday night, that's the first night of the conference, he will have a presentation, but also during the whole Saturday, he will do another presentation. So fantastic. We are so happy that he is part of this conference. And then Dr. Scott Stoll, his name might not be as familiar maybe to some of the people, but he is one of the co-founders of the Plantrition Project. And he has been one of the people that is driving that conference in the US that already has now run for 6 years. By the way, Dr. Neal Barnard also has a yearly conference, also 6 years. So I went to both this year, which was a treat to be able to be present at both conferences. So Dr. Scott Stoll and his team have also been really supporting us in setting this up. And we are also absolutely thrilled that he is being able and willing to come over and be presenting at the conference, and he will also be at one of the workshops we run on the Sunday. So the Sunday is workshops and the Saturday is presentations. Well, then we will have from the UK Dr. Alan Desmond, who is a gastroenterologist. And this is quite interesting to have a gastroenterologist talking about plant-based nutrition, especially if we look at these very detrimental autoimmune diseases, as in Crohn's disease and ulcerative colitis. So he will be coming. And from this organization is Australian, but also New Zealand. And in New Zealand, we have Dr. Luke Wilson. He is a GP in New Zealand, and he was part of a randomized controlled trial done by GPs in GP setting, published 1-2 years ago. And he is a speaker at the conference as well. And then a local from Melbourne, but now international, is Dr. Renee Thomas. And she is training for lifestyle medicine doctor at Loma Linda Hospital and University, which is one of the blue zones, Loma Linda, that area in California. And so she will bring that knowledge back to us. And so she's not, she studied in Melbourne, so she's an Australian girl. And so happy to have her on board at this conference, coming with that knowledge from Loma Linda.
And Loma Linda, is that how you pronounce it?
Loma Linda.
Loma Linda. So that's a wellness centre, hospital, university?
Yeah, so it's a university, hospital. Yeah, so a lot of research is coming out of Loma Linda that shows how beneficial this is, because Loma Linda is an area of the 7 Days Adventists, and these people already, by their religion, live a very healthy life, and they are also, they promote vegetarian and vegan diet, but not everyone takes that on board, and that gives a really nice opportunity to do research in people that are eating more like an omnivorous diet, people that are vegetarian. And then you have different vegetarian diets, like pesco-vegetarian, so including fish, or the lacto-ovo vegetarians, including dairy and eggs, and then the vegans. Yeah. Now, having said that, those vegans are not necessarily whole food plant-based, but they are excluding then all animal food. And they have done a lot of research with these people. And what they, for instance, see is that the vegans are the group that are doing best, looking at type 2 diabetes, or looking at BMI. It's in one of their research papers, they published that the vegans were the only ones that had a healthy BMI. And
BMI, the healthy body weight, body mass index.
Yeah, body mass index. So then you compare weight to your height. Mm-hmm. And that index needs to be below 25, and that's on average the vegans. So all the vegans in that population together were the only ones that were under 25, and also the vegetarians, so like the pesco vegetarians or lacto-ovos, had on average their BMI was above 25. So,
wow!
Oh, in the overweight section, yeah. And then again, if you compare this population to the general population of the United States, they are already a lot healthier. So looking within already quite healthy living population, they usually don't smoke or drink alcohol and that kind of thing. By religion rules, we see differences if they have a different diet.
It's going to be exciting to hear all that new science, or actually science and research has been going on for many, many years, like 20 or 30 years. Being presented by experts in those fields at the conference. It's exciting.
Yeah, and then of course we have presenters from Australia. So we tried to incorporate, also from different states and people that are already a little bit longer in this area, working or presenting, but also newer ones. So to give a broad platform to presenters and. So they are also able to bring that message across in their own areas.
Yeah, fantastic. So there's Aussie doctors. Will you be speaking as well?
I will be speaking. I will be co-presenting with a very young doctor, and that is our own daughter. She finished med school a year ago. She's now finishing up her internship, so being fully qualified now. And she is at the moment doing a nutrition course. For people that are familiar with the plant-based nutrition, it's called the eCornell nutrition plant-based nutrition course, which is a really great comprehensive course to get a broad knowledge about nutrition for our health. And so she's at the moment following that course. So we have done some presenting together before, but it's really nice to also include young doctors, and so that also young people know that it's not only, the older generation bringing this forward. Yeah,
it's exciting. Mother and daughter duo, that's going to be great. That eCornell course in plant-based nutrition, that's an excellent course. I've done that course, and it's incredible. Anyone, I highly recommend doing it if you're interested in plant-based nutrition. For sure.
Yeah, especially, Adam. Yeah, I would like to add, especially because you can't get really substantial training that is science-based at universities at the moment in plant-based nutrition for health. So this is really, it's based at Cornell University, Ithaca, New York, State New York. And it is set up by Dr. Colin Campbell, who he is a doctor by PhD. He is not a medical doctor, but he has done so much research as a biochemist, in biochemical way of approaching things. He has done so much research. He is the one who did the China study, researching like 6,500 people in China back in the 80s, and also coming to the conclusion that in a country back then, animal food consumption was already very low. Not a lot of processed food. Organizations and food outlets like McDonald's hadn't found China yet at that point in time. These were people living in rural communities, so not influenced by a big city. These people, the more animal-based they were eating, the more chronic diseases they had across the board. So that's, already back then you could see that. So it's a constant returning message from every research we see that more animal-based foods in your diet, more chronic diseases, risk for chronic diseases.
Yeah, and the more plants, the healthier we'll become, and the less disease we have.
Yes, so the risk of getting a disease, so it works as a prevention. Mm-hmm. And also, once you've got a chronic disease, you've got a greater chance of halting it, stopping it, or maybe even reversing it. And, reversing chronic diseases with nutrition, that's a new concept. We think we need all the medication, but the medication usually can slow it down, but we cannot really, for many diseases, stop it and even reverse it. So that is so important. And if we now look at big organizations like the organization in the US for dietitians, they came out, I think it was end of 2016, with a position statement where they, after rigorous research, going through all the research available, they came to the conclusion that a whole food plant-based diet is healthy and nutritionally adequate. And I always say, now we have answered all these questions about what about your protein, and what about iron, and what about calcium? You know, all these questions are being answered in that one sentence: nutritionally adequate.
Yeah, so you can get all of those from plants.
You get them all. We have one thing, Adam, and you know that one, that's vitamin B12.
Yes.
And vitamin B12 is not made by animals either. It's made in the soil by bacteria. And back in the days when we were eating straight from the soil and drinking from streams, we would get a little bit of these bacteria because we only need a little bit. And that's how we got our vitamin B12. And that's why you find it in animals that graze from the ground and drink from, you know, just water that's from the ground, basically, and contaminated with these bacteria. But nowadays, because animals in factory farms are not really grazing from the ground anymore, they all are being supplemented with vitamin B12.
Mm.
So, you know,
I suppose they're all being, if we buy vegetables, you know, from a supermarket now and not growing our own, they're all washed, the B12's disappeared, and you wouldn't get adequate B12 if you were just eating vegetables from a supermarket.
Yeah, and I always say we live now in a more hygienic world, and for some reasons that's really great, as in we don't have cholera anymore and other, you know, diseases that exist when you don't have good hygiene. So we need that hygiene. But yeah, that means that we don't eat directly from the ground anymore and don't have that contamination with the good bacteria that gives us B12. So I always say supplement B12, easy to do and good to go. And the animals nowadays are being supplemented because they don't eat straight from the soil anymore, many of them.
Excellent. So I hear Dr. Kim Williams is coming back to Australia as well.
Yes, we are very fortunate that he is a yearly visitor basically to Australia. He's a great fan of the Australian Open, the tennis. Having been a professional tennis player himself, not for long, but when he, you know, in his younger years, then involved in coaching. So he's always very keen to come. And we have done many seminars with him. And it's now time for Brisbane to host him. So on the 13th, it's a Sunday of January, he will be presenting in Brisbane. And we have made a day out of it as a seminar. So other presenters will be there. We will have a Q&A panel with from local nutritionists, dietitians on a panel, and even one coming from Byron Bay. I don't know if you... do you know Josh Reed?
No, I don't. I live here.
Okay, so you might read R-E-E-D. So Josh Reed, he is from Byron Bay, and a dietitian, but also very involved, I think, in athletics. So, it would be a good opportunity to reach out to him and ask exactly what he is doing in Byron Bay. But, you know, so definitely Brisbane, the 13th of January, a symposium day with Dr. Kim Williams. He's a cardiologist. A few years back, he was even the president of the American Cardiology, the American College of Cardiology. I always forget exactly what it is called. He was the president. And for a year, he had that influence as a plant-based cardiologist to try to bring that message across amongst cardiologists, because you have seen the effects of the diet in heart disease. So it's so important that cardiologists learn about this as well.
Yeah, I remember Kim Williams when he was speaking in Melbourne, and I spoke to him and I asked him, I said, how does the whole food plant-based diet reverse the heart disease? How did this happen to me, And he said, Adam, we think it's because a whole food plant-based diet is an anti-inflammatory diet, which it is. But he said, thinking about it, what's really happening is you're taking away the poisons that are causing the inflammation. And I said, well, what are those poisons? And he said, it's meat and dairy and processed foods. You take those away and it stops the inflammation from, being hurting. It stops the inflammation from being inflamed all the time. And you start eating plants that are high in phytonutrients, antioxidants, reduces the inflammation, and your body just goes back to homeostasis very quickly, and it's very fast. And that was a very simple way of him explaining it to me. But it's exciting how quickly the body can heal when you take away the things that are causing the problem and giving it foods that actually nurture you.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah,
it can go really quickly. I do courses here as a Food for Life instructor in Adelaide, and that is a course through PCRM, Dr. Neal Barnard's organization. And we have to warn people that come to the course and that are on diabetic medication or hypertension medication. Really warn them. Really, follow your blood sugars very closely, because if you start adapting this, you might see a rapid improvement and you need less medication. So you have to consult your doctor to help you lower the medication. And that's what we see. So that is unbelievable how quickly that can happen. And also people with heart disease, you can even visualize that the plaque in the coronary arteries become smaller and might even disappear. And with an angiogram, and that might not happen, in 2 or 3 weeks' time, but by going on a healthy diet, your blood vessels start functioning better, they can relax better, they can open up better, your blood becomes more, or I should say, less viscous, less thick, so it flows better. So that means that almost in a few weeks' time, people already feel better by all these mechanisms that come into play, and indeed taking away what we call the toxins. They work as toxins, these foods. And they have toxins in them. Also, by the way you are preparing, for instance, meats, the pan frying or the grilling or the, all these processes that we do, we don't eat meat raw usually, means we are adding toxins to the product.
Yeah, it's very interesting, isn't it? So what advice would you give people, or recommendations or tips if they wanted to start eating this way? What would be the best way to go about starting?
Yes, that's a good question. In the beginning, it was the same for me. You think, okay, I know this. Why should I put these foods into my body if I know they harm me? So I didn't want to eat them anymore. And then you are a little bit nervous, as in, but what do I eat then, And I think, again, that power plate already tells you a lot. Also by volume, as in, make sure you've got a lot of grains and a lot of legumes every day on your plate. Incorporate them. And then all sorts of veggies. So the orange ones and the red ones and the yellow ones, all sorts of veggies. And fruits. So you can have fruit. Also, people with diabetes can have fruit, no problem. because it's all in a fibrous environment. So that fiber is so important for us. And plant foods have a lot of fiber. As for animal foods, 0. So, and we now know how important fiber is for our gut. And we now know more and more nowadays, we learn about the bacteria that live in our gut and how important they are for us. So that's how you go about it. So you try to replicate that power plate, and the message is eat enough. Eat enough. Because we always want, we want to gain weight, but it's easy to gain weight on a diet that incorporates animal foods because they are so calorie dense. There are so many calories per, pound or per kilogram or per 100 grams. Compared to plant foods, they are low in calories, but very high in nutrients. So all of a sudden, we don't have to say to ourselves anymore, oh, I can't eat more than this portion because I will gain weight. No, you won't. You can eat till satiation.
Yeah.
And that's a new concept, isn't it?
It really is. To eat, you can eat as a lot of food. And if you enjoy food, this is a great way to go about it because you can actually still lose weight while you're eating a lot of food because it's lower in calories. It's high in nutrient, it's high in fiber that makes you feel full and satiated. And I eat when I'm hungry. I never restrict my eating.
No. At the moment you feel hungry, you can eat, but eat food.
Eat the good food, the whole food.
Yeah.
And plants.
So if I have some, leftovers, I will eat some of those, or I have fruit if I'm hungry. I have always some cooked, one or the other way, cooked potatoes that I can, I like them cold, but you can reheat them as a snack. Yeah. Very satiating. So just eat food and don't go to processed foods as certain bars or, the potato chips or, don't go to processed foods, but just eat more of the healthy food. And there's no restriction. Yeah, and then of course it's not easy, Adam. So I could refer to your program, the I Feel Good program, because putting it into practice is a little bit of a barrier for a lot of people. Now we have the internet and we can access many websites. So PCRM is one of them. They run a 21-day Kickstart program. And as soon as we have established our website a little bit better and filled it in with resources, then that will be there as well. And hopefully in the future, our own Kickstart programs. But that's a great way to start. You run a program. You might explain quickly what you do and people can do.
Yeah, I started the program because a lot of people ask me, how did you change your life? How did you go from this big, fat, overweight guy who had a heart attack at 39 to losing the weight and gaining the energy? And so I put something together just to teach people how to practically implement this way of eating into their life and make it easy. And the results have been great. I always get people to go to their doctor and get them monitored. I think it's very important that you eat this way and be monitored, like you were saying, by a professional. And they can look after them. If their meds need to be adjusted, they will do that. But, we've had people in the program, we teach them what to have for breakfast, what to have for lunch, what to have for dinner, what to have for snacks. We give you meal plans. We do coaching once a week. I do a live coaching call like we're doing now to the group. We have a private group where people can ask questions and I answer those each day. We have plenty of resources and videos to help people overcome their fear that they won't get enough protein and things like that. And we reference those to doctors in the plant-based world. It's quite a comprehensive program and people have been able to start to introduce these foods into their life really easily. And the results have been incredible. People have lost up to 40 kilos. They've got all this energy. Two people have reverse type 2 diabetes within 12 weeks, and as a year later, and they still don't have diabetes. It's blood pressure has dropped for people, cholesterol drops for people. It's so powerful. And what makes it really fulfilling for me is that not only did this work for me, but for those that are sincere and really follow it, it works for them too. Not only in my program, but you're probably seeing it in your programs, your patients, and you see it over the internet everywhere. You know, you go to Forks Over Knives, PMRC. I'm sure there's case studies there as well. It's so powerful. So that's
very powerful.
Yeah.
So there are some avenues. Again, many doctors online that, and many of them are America-based. We have, of course, in Australia, in Melbourne, Malcolm Mackay, GP, together with nutritionist and scientific librarian Jenny Cameron. They run a beautiful website. Now it's a lot of words, but I think it's like Whole Foods. Put it in like Whole Foods plant-based nutrition in Australia. I always forget. But they have a very comprehensive website.
They do.
With many links. And they run a Facebook group that everyone can become a member of that is called Whole Food Plant-Based Aussies.
Yeah, excellent.
And a great source of information, recipes. If you are stuck, you can ask questions. Yeah. And they also now run immersions, and they run over 5 days. And you can all find that through their website. So I think, it starts to grow. And I think there are, of course, other people in Australia doing their bit of work. We have Robin Schutter in Sydney as a naturopath that has a very, very comprehensive knowledge of plant-based nutrition and helping people transition. Yeah. And her website is Empower Health, I think.
Yes.
Yeah,
Robin writes for our magazine from time to time too with her articles.
Yeah.
So that's great.
Yeah.
She's really good.
So we do have these Australian-based resources as well. Yeah. And so we want to grow this. We want more people in different states and territories. And that is also great of Doctors for Nutrition. We have almost now in every state and territory, we have a plant-based doctor, a whole food plant-based doctor, being our ambassador. We call them also ambassadoc, like an ambassador. Yeah. And we have a whole food plant-based dietitian, because we as doctors, we want to closely work together with dietitians and nutritionists. So they are our representatives in the several states and territories and in New Zealand, so that they can drive this message in those states, because this is such a vast country that we want these representatives in the different states. And, almost every week we find someone new that is already on this path and not really known to us, but it's so exciting to see how this is growing. And people, doctors, nutritionists, dietitians, they are more and more open to this. So it's very positive message.
It is a very positive message. It's helping a lot of people. I'm so grateful to you and all the other doctors that are getting on board with this, because, when I had the heart attack, there was no choice. Let's just say you have to take these medications for the rest of your life. And I think it's great now that I would like to see the day where people have given the choice, and you can only have a choice if you know both sides. So it would be fantastic if someone has heart disease or diabetes or an autoimmune disease or an ill, where their doctor can say to them, look, well, you can have medications or you can do a whole food plant-based diet. And a plant-based diet, well, you need to make some lifestyle shifts and changes and change some habits, but we'll support you in that. We'll send you to the people that can help you. Or we can just take the medications. it's up to you. It's your choice. And I think it's great that that choice is becoming more available now. More and more doctors are getting interested, or even if they're just understanding or know that there is an option. And I think that's what the doctors for nutrition is going to grow into, something that allows doctors to be able to offer that and understand it, which is so exciting.
Yeah, and we hope as a next step that we can that we have the opportunity to incorporate this in the education system for medical professionals and allied health professionals. Mm-hmm. So that will be a next step. But that's so important that it's going to be incorporated.
You've got big plans. That's awesome.
I know it's a lot of work to do. Yeah, but we take it step by step. And I think what you just said, it's so important that the message is known. Yeah. And even though doctors might not know all the ins and outs, if we get to the point that when patients go to the doctor and say, I'm plant-based, that the doctor is not saying, oh, that's dangerous, but say, yeah, I've heard about it. I know it's healthy. Please continue, then they don't, not even at this point in time, exactly need to know how or what, but that they are supportive, because you can imagine that people might hear from me this message and from you, but then they go to their own doctor that they trust, and the doctor says it's dangerous. So how confusing is that?
It's really confusing.
And then I'm not blaming that doctor, but I mean it's that level of education where we are at the moment. So we need to change that.
Yeah, and it looks like you're doing that well, and it's heading in that direction. So thank you for it. Thank you for being here today. And just a reminder, if anybody wants to go to the conference, can you please just repeat the name of the conference, where it is, and when it is? And we'll put the links where people can go and find out more about it underneath this video for you.
Beautiful. Well, as Doctors for Nutrition, our website it's a holding site at the moment with a little bit of information, but all the information for the conference and also for Brisbane, Dr. Kim Williams, a seminar will be there, and it's doctorsfornutrition.org, so just all one word. And what we would like to do is for people that subscribe to your magazine to have a 10% discount. So we're really thrilled to offer that. And they will find that at the checkout. And then on that website, you will find the links to our Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and all these social media as well. And the conference is called the Australasian Nutrition in Healthcare Conference. It will be in Melbourne, in the Docklands, in a beautiful venue there. And the Sunday has workshops, and that will be next door to that venue in the Docklands Library. So easy to find, and I think a beautiful opportunity. If you're not in Melbourne, then to come to Melbourne.
Great time of year to go to Melbourne. It's warmer.
Exactly.
Yeah, definitely.
You can make a holiday out of it.
Yeah, and likewise, I'd like to offer everybody that is involved and your audience a free 12-month subscription to the I Feel Good magazine. I'll give you a code, and they can just download it, and they can have 12 months access to the next 12 months issues.
Fantastic. Thank you for that offer.
Have great recipes and get more information about eating a whole food plant-based diet.
Wow. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Adam.
My pleasure.
And thank you also so much for everything you do to support this movement, to educate people. And, you are a person that, underwent, the whole process as a patient. And you also have a background as in being a chef. Yeah. So, I mean, what better combination do you want? As in someone talking and teaching about plant-based nutrition, but then also being able to so well demonstrate it and to construct such beautiful meals, nutritious and beautiful meals. So that's wonderful.
Thank you. It all starts with the food, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you, Elaine. It's a pleasure talking to you. And I look forward to the conference. It's going to be awesome. And Brisbane with Dr. Kim Williams.
Dr. Kim Williams. Yeah, that's the 13th of January. And then the conference is 15 to 17 February. Melbourne.
Yeah. Excellent. Thank you so much. A pleasure talking to you as always. And I look forward to catching up with you soon. Thanks for sharing your knowledge and wisdom with us all.
Pleasure. Thank you, Adam.